good morning all. Thank you so much. Sarah, thank you so much for that warm welcome. As a fill-in for the keynote, my first thought was, boy, I wish Kitty was here. She gives great presentations. And then my next worry, what am I going to talk about? And then my third worry is I don't wear ties or suits. There's only one person in this room that's seen me in a suit, I will guarantee you, and that is Jen Matsky, because she was at my wedding. So I live in Oregon for many reasons. One is I can be casual at work. But I put on a suit today, or a sport coat, mostly for John Clapp. I thought, what would John Clapp do? And he wanted me to wear at least a coat. So here's the difficulty. I've inherited Kitty Harris's talk because it was great. So I'm going to be talking from her slide deck, but then I had to put my own spin on it at the end. So it'll be a tale of two keynotes. So stay with me. It will be interesting. So Kitty Harris has been in the field for a long time, a pioneer, a superhero in recovery. And she provided this slide deck that we're going to go through, and then we'll switch over to my slides. So substance use in the collegiate population should be no surprise to any of you. If you were surprised by any of these figures drastically, I don't know where you've been. Substance use is highest among the college age group. And in fact, if you look at college and non-college folks at the same age, our college students will outdrink our non-college folks. 49% of college students engage in high-risk alcohol use and or abuse prescription or illicit drugs. 23% of college students meet the criteria for substance use disorders. 19% of college students meet diagnostic criteria for an alcohol use disorder, and an estimated 4% of students on any given college campus are in recovery for addiction. So that's right there. One question we get asked a lot is, if we're going to start a recovery program, well, how many students are out there? And so one formula you can use is a simple 4% formula. You should at least be able to find, or there should be at least 4% of your students should be in recovery from a substance on your campus. Relapse risk, obviously, still high among this population, particularly high with new freedoms, less structure and supervision, and what Kitty coined, I think she coined it, an abstinence hostile environment, which I have to tell you, out of all the things that I've used to leverage programs on our campuses, I will say that this is probably the term that I've used the most. In part, because I believe recovery support is a social justice issue, insofar that our students that are struggling in a substance use disorder or are active in their recovery and sobriety, our colleges are not set to support them by default. And Kitty made that very poignant point when she said abstinence hostile environments. We owe it to our students to succeed. We owe it to our students to create a learning environment in which they can thrive and succeed and come to graduation. And our current colleges without recovery support are simply abstinence hostile. And if you don't believe me, I would urge you to go to a college campus on move-in weekend and simply walk around after hours and see, is it easier to find a recovery meeting or free alcohol? See what you find. Probably not a surprise. Students in recovery frequently isolate to avoid alcohol and drug pressures, and also, I would argue, stigma. And obviously, isolation is not good for our mental health, and it also is not good for recovery. Without recovery support, many students are forced to choose simply between recovery and education. And that is a choice our students should not have to make. Okay? You gotta believe that. That is the core of the recovery movement, is that higher education should not exclude people because they're in recovery. Okay? That's why we do the work. So collegiate recovery programs, you'll hear them called collegiate recovery programs. I still slip into my collegiate recovery community speak. I like community because they're my students, but we run a CRP, which is our program. We provide a recovery-friendly space. Some of us have talked about our recovery spaces being this protective shield from the outside world, that students can feel as though they have peers they have struggled with through their recovery, struggled with through their substance use to recovery, and that people understand them and get them. That's the basic tenet of sort of what we do. Social community is what it's about. If you work with students in recovery, they will often tell you, how did you remain sober? How are you maintaining your recovery? And it's through the people, the connections, those supporting them. Fosters healthy relationships, allows for students' recovery and emotional growth. Most CRPs are peer-driven. Most are 12-step based, although not all, and you will hear some debate on this throughout campuses. We do not have a strict 12-step model. We support all paths to recovery on our campus. And they host recovery-oriented events. This is a little bit small. This is Kitty's work again. So if you look at recovery and the 5 domains: instrumental, emotional, validation, companionship, and informational functional support. So instrumental could be academic advising, financial aid, scholarships; emotional support, 12-step meetings, other recovery meetings, structured activities, social activities; validation, self-esteem, a normalization of recovery on campus; companionship, sense of belonging, peer relationships, and community relationships; and informational, orientation, training, health and wellness, life skills, employment readiness. So if you look at the programs across the country, we will have different functional support domains that are represented. Kitty really provided some great quotes to sort of illustrate this. Before we get to those quotes, I just want to talk to you a little bit of the research. Those of you that know me, I'm a big data nerd. I love data. I love crunching numbers. I love charts and graphs. There's emerging science around recovery. The bottom line is it works. In terms of CRPs, the average relapse rates for CRPs is 8%. CRPs have higher GPAs. These students are bright. They're also awesome to work with. So I will not say this is a selfless work that I do. I gain a lot. I've learned more from my recovery students than I probably have ever taught them. CRP students have higher graduation rates, and they simply are good for retention. And we are in the business of retention nowadays, unfortunately. These students are in also the business of helping you with retention. Why I enrolled in my CRP: emotional, companionship, instrumental, and informational. You can see from her study in 2012, this is Harris and Kimball. Reasons for enrolling: sense of community and fellowship, because a shared struggle is barely a struggle at all. That would be emotional support. To stay in a sober environment, to finish my undergraduate degree with a focus on recovery goals with those around me. Companionship support. When you have recovery communities on campus, your students will connect with other students. They don't have to redefine themselves. They don't have to explain themselves. They know when they're in your CRC or CRP that those people understand them. That's what it's about. They offer extremely large amounts of support academically, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and much more, like scholarships. Scholarships help. I will say many of us around the country also have worked out with our disability access services. That's what we call on our campus. Early scheduling, which at first I was like, well, why would you need early scheduling? Well, try scheduling all your 12-step meetings, recovery meetings, everything else you do, and still maintain your GPA. And so many campuses have advocated to have early enrollment, early scheduling. I was an addict who just got out of rehab and wanted to go back to school and be successful. That's informational support. Why I like my Collegiate Recovery Program: emotional, companionship, instrumental, and informational. Okay. Some quotes around that. That I can feel connected to people my age with similar goals without having to explain or defend for my choices. And if you listen carefully to college students not in recovery, you will hear things like, well, you can't be an alcoholic in college. That's just college. Now, would we say that about other people, other people's identities? No, but we still say that about people in recovery, right? That is a threat to their recovery as far as I'm concerned. Having friends in recovery on campus and taking classes with them. Our students, we don't even organize this at Oregon State, and I know other campuses don't organize this as well, but students in recovery will find each other, they'll find out which professors are recovery supportive, they will take their classes together, they will find a way to be successful because it normalizes their academics, it normalizes their life. My roommates and other people who are serious about school and recovery in the program. Now that we've gotten a little bit of a foothold on our campus, our recovery students have a little bit of a following for students not in recovery because they know when they work with those students, academics are serious. They know that they're going to find people to study with at night that aren't going to pull them out drinking. And so it's pretty interesting to watch this evolve. I know on Patrice's campus, they have a whole intramural club at Augsburg that is very successful. And when talking to her students, they'll often say, yeah, we really kick a lot of butt. And well, that's great. And they're like, because a lot of the students are hungover or drunk while they're actually playing. And we're on our game. And it's pretty exciting. Provides a support network of employees and students without having to seek them out on their own. Our biggest recovery champion on our campus is a man named Jerry, who I never knew before we opened a recovery community. 30 years of sobriety. He's an asset manager in housing and dining. I have no idea what that means. I still don't know what that means. But he is at our clubhouse. He is with our students. He is mentoring them. He is guiding them. I had a student once say, well, Rob, how can you do this work? You're not in recovery. And I tell them, quite frankly, because I surround you with people that are, that will be your mentors. And Jerry is invaluable. And I wouldn't have known Jerry existed without the CRP. And it's also provided Jerry, I would argue, really an interesting part of his job, because his supervisor said, I know this isn't in your PD, but you take as much time as you need to do this because it's important. There was a character study that looked at CRPs. We're going to go over this briefly because if you start grilling me on this data, I won't know it because it's kitties. So they looked at 29 locations, sampled over 486 students. They wanted to identify the characteristics of students in our CRPs. They looked at demographics, substance use disorder history, recovery history, and current functioning. A little bit more of a male population, which probably isn't surprising to anyone. Average age was 26. Approximately 50% had roommates that were also in recovery. I'm betting Augsburg drove that number a little bit, and Rutgers. Approximately 75% reported mental health diagnosis. Approximately 85% reported their mental health as good or very good, which I really like that bullet because if you look at the prior bullet, you make assumptions. Different programs have different assumptions. Our assumption is that our students in recovery are like any other student until they tell us they're not, until they say they need help. We don't make a default that they need any more help than any other student except for recovery support. Other campuses have different ways of approaching it. And I would argue that our students struggle like any other student. They just have some uniqueness about them because they're in recovery. Crp research a little bit more. CRPs may provide an opportunity to reduce duration of addiction. Average year of drinking until abstinence is 16. In the present study that Kitty has here, they showed an average of 6.9 years, so shortening the duration. Similar were for other substances. Early recovery not likely due to selection bias as severity was high. CRPs may provide an additional protective factor to addiction recovery. I would argue they do. I would argue that it makes perfect sense. I was in a talk with one of you recently about statistics and assessment, and they're like, well, Rob, you have great assessment data on your prevention programs, you have great numbers, you show efficacy, why don't you have that for your CRC? And in part, I kind of felt like, you haven't spent time in our CRC. Like, spend some time in our CRC and ask me that question. We're working on it, but these students have been studied a lot. They're asked a lot of questions. And if you spend time in that lounge, you know it works. And to me, it's a social justice issue as well. We make a comparison. Our students kind of feel like they're a CRC on our campus in terms of cultural resource center as well. It's interesting the parallels and the friendships they've made with the cultural resource centers. And if anyone walked into our Black Cultural Center and said, show me the data, this is effective, that would not happen. This shouldn't happen, right? I don't think we need to be walking into our CRCs on our campus and demanding efficacy data. I think if we can show it, that's great. I support it. But my vice provost isn't going to say to me, Rob, oh, your numbers are off on your CRP, get rid of it. That is not going to happen. She wouldn't put the support into it. So I'm not saying don't study it. I'm just saying you shouldn't have to have the data to start one of these. And the data's out there and it's evolving. All right, so that was the first tale. That is I think an understanding sort of the basic nuts and bolts of recovery. You will notice a slight content shift now that I control the PowerPoints, which could be scary, but we'll see. So I'm calling this the Epic Challenge, and I've already tweeted out at the hashtag, and so I'm looking for you all to tweet back using the hashtag as well. I have a question out there, and I will put a video out there later. I chose a different take, and the preface is, what movie did Rob watch on the flight here? I can argue that if it was Silence of the Lambs, this would be a much different talk. Rob saw, which he was very excited to see, the Avengers: Age of Ultron. So, another preface. I love Patrick Stewart. I think he's amazing. I have a pretty big man crush on him. He was my Captain Picard. And for the purpose of the rest of this talk, I would like to channel my Patrick Stewart, and I would like to be known as Professor R, and we are the R people, and these are Days of Future Recovery. This is my new film trailer. Sorry, Greg Williams, I'm not trying to compete with you. But I am channeling Professor R for the rest of my talk, and I'm channeling all of you for your inner superheroes. Hold on, I'm getting John claps. Yes. Okay, John, that's good. It's good. He said I'm allowed to drop the mic. He said, go ahead. We got plenty of them. So why do we do this work? This is very important in terms of recovery and prevention as far as I'm concerned. This is a field where if passion is not driving you, if at the end of the day your heart is not in this work, I do not think you will be successful. Okay? I don't think it's possible. So I want you to think about your origin story. Okay, do you all know what an origin story is? So Batman's origin story, young Bruce Wright, that's kind of ironic. Young Bruce Wright, the billionaire's son, sees his parents murdered in Gotham, horrible crime. At that point, Bruce Wright, young Mr. Bruce Wright, says to himself, I can either take my billions, go to a safe place, and do nothing, or I can dedicate my life to fighting crime and avenge the death of my parents and become the legend that is Batman. That is the origin story, okay? I have my origin story for this work. I'm not going to take the rest of the time and talk about it. I'm going to give you a little brief part of my origin story. I was in a fraternity, and I joined that fraternity for values. That fraternity did a lot for my leadership development, my men's development, who I am as a person today. There was a man in that fraternity, his name was Michael, and what I know now that I didn't know then was Michael had a raging substance use disorder, but he was the life of the party. Women loved him. People wanted to be around him. He lit up a room. If you wanted fun, any hour of the day, you would find Michael. Michael graduated just barely from college, and we got a word from one of my fraternity brothers not a year after he died in a fatal car crash. Alcohol was on board. His disease killed him. I would argue my university, my fraternity, did not do anything to help, and I'm responsible there as well. We did nothing to steer his path. There were many opportunities to engage with him. We didn't talk about recovering. I didn't know what AA was, and we could have done better. So that's part of my origin story. There's other facets I will tell you some other time. I'm not at the podium. But that's part of my origin story. So I found this really cool website, The Avengers Top 10 Tips for Building Remarkable Teams. I am translating that into our epic challenge for our League of Legendary Preventionists, Recovery Specialists, and Students. This is my superhero charge for all of you. If you look in your book, the little pictures here, this is really well done, by the way. This is classy. This is very nice. These are your superheroes. They're in the book. I would argue all of you are superheroes, but all of these people have extraordinary powers, and we will utilize them today. And there are people that aren't mentioned here, obviously, that have extraordinary powers. But I am telling you as a charge that you are to find these other legendary superheroes and give them the gift that you have and ask for that gift in return to help them on their path. Let me give you an example. Rob's tip number 1, understand your team's superpower. And this team could be a national team. Patrice is on my team, okay? She's one of my remarkable superheroes. Sarah's on my team, Sarah Nearad. Okay, understand their superpowers, okay? So Captain America can lead his people into an impossible, dismal battle situation, and he will prevail, okay? That sounds a lot like Patrice to me, okay? She might not have the shield or a cape, but when I am in dark times, I've picked up the phone and said, Patrice, this will not work. This will fail. Why am I doing this work? I cannot succeed. And Patrice, without fail, picks me up, says, no, you're gonna succeed. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. And it's what has to be done. And there are lives at stake. And I know that sounds like I'm doing a Lifetime movie special now, there are lives at stake. But there are lives at stake with this work, okay? Incredible Hulk, Dr. Bruce Banner is an expert gamma radiation specialist with an unusually mild manner and loads of insight and wisdom beneath the surface, in addition to being that super strength smashing talent the big green guy offers is the Incredible Hulk. Any of you familiar with Jason Kilmer? Yeah, Jason Kilmer, he doesn't know I'm talking about him right now, and he's not at the meeting, and that's okay. He's my Bruce Banner. I've only seen Jason upset 1 or 2 times, but look out. He will use that amazing wisdom and power he has like a laser and cut through obstacles like no one's business. When I am stuck and can't figure out a solution to a problem, I call Jason Kilmer and I say, what data is there out there for this? And he will say, that's not a problem, Rob, I'll get it to you. That will leverage that president, that provost, that funder, that community member, and your path will be cleared. One of the world's greatest spies and masters of disguise, she's a legendary scarlet-haired Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, also the only member of the Avengers that can sue the Incredible Hulk. Teresa can't be here from Kennesaw, but she's kind of my Black Widow. If I had a funder that I wanted to get money from, I would send in Teresa, no doubt. I would call Teresa and say, I got a funder that wants to give money, what do I do? And she would tell me what to do. She would absolutely get me money. She would not quit until there was money on the table. She would pull all resources together. If you worked with her, she has built a board of funders who have leveraged massive support for that program. People that give money because they want to give money because they want to make a difference, okay? So by the way, any likeness to John Clapp and Thor, that was accidental. I apologize. People were like, why is John Clapp in? I was like, no, that's the actual stock photo. So understand your team's powers. They will all eventually understand who's the best person for each task or how to best strategize and ensure with the greatest level of success with their limited resources. What does that sound like? Do we have boundless resources on our campuses? I have pretty limited resources. I have to squeeze the last penny out of a dollar to make things happen, okay? Alone they will fail, together anything is possible. Folks, this recovery movement has some really glowing bright stars, but we are in this together. We will only succeed together. We need to leverage each other's success. We need to create paths for our students to flourish all over this country. I can make the same argument for prevention. We've seen a commercialization of prevention with what products you can buy, how much do you pay to have some expert come in and fix your problems. We're not gonna win that way. We win being in the trenches, on the ground, getting dirty, making things happen, okay, together. And that could be your own team internally. I'm also arguing for this meeting, your superheroes are all over the country and they're all sitting in this room right now. Understand your group's kryptonite. I'm gonna tell you my kryptonite, but please do not use it against me. I am trusting all of you. This is in the cone of silence, no one else can know. Forged in a covert base, I'm arguing somewhere in the Dakota or Montanas, I'm not sure. Forged in a covert base, this extremely debilitating and sticky substance can render superheroes completely ineffective without exceptional teamwork, tireless perseverance, and genius level strategy. That is red tape. Red tape has broken me more times on more campuses than I can tell you. When I get into arguments on funding something, a budget, bringing someone in, I have lost it completely about clearing a check. If there's time, I'll give you an example at the end of this. And I can't make it through, and then I call upon my strategists on my campus, the union director, the housing director. I call my housing director friend and I say, you've done this before, how do you do it? What's the secret? Oh, the business center, you don't want to talk to that person. You talk to Joyce. Joyce can get that form through for you, okay? I am not useful in red tape scenarios, but I have built a league of people around me that can get me through the red tape. The world is ending, or why every team needs a common goal. I think this is important, and I think we lose sight on this. I think these are the meetings that ground us back to what the common point is, okay? What are we doing? It is so simple. We're advocating for students in recovery. That is the work, that is our mission. It could be not any clearer. Now, yes, Iron Man is about saving the entire planet. I will scale this back down to 2. Advocating for students in recovery and preventing alcohol and drug misuse, coming from the Higher Ed Center's website directly. That is a simple mission. That is a clear briefing I have just given you in terms of what is our purpose. When we stray from this purpose in political debates, in who's got the best program, in who's doing the best work, in how much this person costs, or that's when we lose focus and we forget about our students. I would argue that my best administrators are the ones that spend time with students still. That there is a time when you lose your purpose when you're not with your students. So our vice provost comes and sits in our recovery clubhouse at least once or twice a year. She's a very busy woman, but she meets those students and she understands what they are dealing with, okay? She understands our common goal. An evil arch nemesis is the ultimate motivator. Okay, what are our arch nemesis out there? Shout them out. No one has, I have them. Tell me how you've defeated them. What are your arch nemesis? Nemesi? Nemesises? John, I need a ruling. Who are your arch nemesis? Who's your arch nemesis? Big alcohol, that's a great one. Big alcohol's war chest will never come close to our war chest. We couldn't advertise, we couldn't hire the supermodels they hire, we couldn't have the TV placements, right? We couldn't have a recovery student placed in movies, right? Like they can, oh, this Coors Light is great, right? No, we could never do that. Big alcohol. What else? Greek life, yes. So Greek life can be on your campus, a nemesis, or your superhero team can help pull them to be part of the solution. I've seen it done, but it can be done. Who else are your big enemies? Big tobacco, still out there. People still smoking. Who else? Alumni can be, yes. It's also like, I'm sure someone out there, not me, is under the breath saying, my president. Not my president. My president's part of the solution, but could be board members, president, the media, right? We have our people out there that are our biggest enemy, but they can also be our biggest motivator, right? Without Lex Luthor, there would be really no Superman story, right? Without the Joker, Batman really wouldn't have a purpose, right? So we need them to motivate us. So stigma for recovery to me is the big nemesis, okay? Our students are stigmatized. Our students are treated differently. Our students in recovery don't have the same access and opportunity as our students not in recovery. Fraternities, and I could do a whole talk on fraternities, and I was in a fraternity, I'm a fraternity person. Fraternities are access to a lot of power and resources. Predicated on alcohol is the lubricant and the thing that binds them on many campuses. Our recovery students don't have access to that. It's not safe for them, right? So stigma, right, still exists, coming out of mostly ignorance. I had a very intelligent person on my campus who had a very high power, not in the president's cabinet, but had a lot of power, and I said, oh, I'm so excited that we're gonna be part of this living community that you have coming online. They're like, you are? Recovery students? No, I don't think I cleared that. I don't want recovery students in this hall. Oh, how come? Well, this community is really about health. Oh, I don't know why I didn't. Of course. Big alcohol, we already mentioned, right? So those are our enemies, but we can unite and we can defeat them, right? We can support our students. Nerd, God, or soldier, we all belong, right? Thor is our God, right? Bruce Banner, our nerd, right? Captain America, our soldier, right? This is not, and if you look around here, we take on many different shapes, forms, places, academic backgrounds, right? There's a place for all of us at the table. Jerry, who works in housing, would never be a part of a recovery community unless Jerry had a passion for it and he said, I want to support those students. He's not the person you would think of you had to leverage, but he's probably transformed our program more than any other person on our campus. So here's my charge to all of you. And I think Oregon is doing a great job because we have really united as a state supporting recovery. So if you're a private college, a public college, a small college, a large college, if you're transforming youth in recovery, do we have TYR people in here? Yes, we got TYR people in here. If you don't know what TYR is, please seek them out. The Higher Education Center, we're obviously here on their turf. The Association of Recovery Schools, ARS, is ARS here? ARS, Sarah's part of ARS. Working with high schools. And the Association of Recovery and Higher Education, are we here? Yeah. Yes, we are here as well. So we all are assets to you. We are all resources. This is all about helping students in recovery. This isn't about competition. This is about being at the table, supporting our students together. What would it be like if we built a program where students enter recovery high schools and we seamlessly get them to recovery colleges, and then we seamlessly connect them to a group of recovery alumni all over this country that say, guess what? Part of the reason we're hiring you is because you're in recovery. Because we know what that means and you've had a commitment to your sobriety for years, right? What if that was the solution that we're looking at? What if that was our end place? So this is my other one that I really like. Don't worry about who's the best superhero. If you watch Iron Man, right, played by, or his other identity is Tony Stark. Tony Stark always wants to be the best superhero, and that gets him into quite a bit of trouble, causing the whole movie that just came released, to be really sorry about the spoiler. But if we worry about who's the best, the brightest in the room, you will lose sight of a lot of opportunities. If you assume you are the expert with your students, you have failed. If you are the school that thinks they're doing the best job in recovery, you have failed. If you think all your publications make you the smartest person in the room, you've probably failed, okay? Don't worry about who's the best, worry about what strengths you can leverage from the community of people around you that have the same purpose and goal. So, should we all be Texas Tech? No. Do we have a lot to learn from Texas Tech? Was Texas Tech a pioneer? Is Kitty a pioneer? Did they build models of recovery support? Absolutely. Would I send a student in recovery to Texas Tech? In a heartbeat. But should we be Texas Tech? No. We don't need a Texas Tech, we have a Texas Tech. Oop, that was a little delayed tech on Texas. Rutgers, is Rutgers here? Tell me Rutgers is here. No Rutgers? That's sad to me. One thing about Texas Tech, and I will give you part of my origin story as well. We had no money at St. Cloud to start that program. We had no funding, no support. We were facing double-digit million-dollar deficits in the upcoming financial future. I picked up the phone and called Texas Tech and said, really want to learn about your program. Kitty Harris said, well, why don't you come down here? And I was like, oh, that's great, but I can't afford it. Well, I can. Put me on the phone with Matt Russell. Matt Russell said, well, we'll fly you down. I said, I don't have the money. No, you're not hearing me. We'll fly you down. No expense. So we flew down. She and Matt Russell were my superheroes. That launched that program. That was the catalyst that forged the program that is so successful today with Jen Mansky at St. Cloud. Rutgers, Lisa Laitman, when I said I was confused, didn't know what I was doing, what should I do? She said, come visit. Make yourself at home. Meet our students. I met a young woman there that later took on a job at SAMHSA and is leading a brilliant career. I learned a ton from Lisa. They're an amazing program, but should we be Rutgers? No, there is a Rutgers. We don't need to be Rutgers. Augsburg Step-Up program, one of my favorites. My neighbor for many years when I was in St. Cloud. Patrice has held my mental health together for many years, which has been cobwebs, pretty much, my mental health. She said, come on down, learn from us. Don't be us, learn from us. You might not like everything we're doing, and that's okay. There are things Patrice does that I wouldn't do on my campus, but it works for Patrice. It wouldn't work at my campus. St. Cloud State, should we all be St. Cloud State? No, it's cold in the winter. I've gotten weak. I'm in Oregon now. Jen Mansky, one of my superheroes. If I wanted to set up a program that really had on-campus housing, I would call Patrice and I would call Jen Mansky and I would probably call Lisa Laitman. I would learn from Jen's brilliance on running a program amidst $12 million one-year financial cuts and another $10 million the next year, and how she got scholarships for her students despite double-digit million-dollar cuts. That's superhero-like behavior. Should we all be Ohio State? Oh, and before I do that, that is not a pot leaf. I got very concerned when I was in the bookstore. I'm at a recovery conference, and I was like, pot doesn't have nuts on it. James Lang, does cannabis grow nuts? Is he here? I don't think they did. And then it's a Buckeye. Oh, okay. Anybody know the history of the Buckeye? It's fascinating. I would find someone this is what I want you all to do also. Start talking to Ohio State people not in this room and ask them, what is a Buckeye and where does the origin come from? It took us, John, 9 people? 9 people to find the right story of the Buckeye. Okay, I know it's a little more complicated than a beaver, and I live in Oregon and there's trees. But you ought to know your mascot, right? So that's not a pot leaf, that is the mighty Buckeye that paved the civilization of Ohio. So should we all be the Ohio State? No, sorry, the Ohio State. We should not all be you. I know many people want to be you in football. I'm happy that we're where we are with football. We're rebuilding. Should we all be the Ohio State? No, we should not. Do they do great work here? Absolutely. Did I steal one of their sexual violence people? Yes. Who's coming to work with me? Absolutely. Sometimes our president wants us to be the Ohio State because he came from here. But no, we should not be the Ohio State. The Ohio State does great things. I've learned a ton from their program. If I need a superhero that will mobilize students, that is fearless, that will go in and make things happen, that's Sarah. Like I call Sarah. Like she could have a cape, and probably people will be like, oh, that makes sense. You have a cape. That totally makes sense for you. She's transformed this campus. She has transformed this community. She has changed countless lives. And I don't think it's for fame and fortune. But guys, I think that's her mission. I think that's her origin story, okay? She will be a valuable resource for you. Now, should we all be I won't do it, sorry. Should we all be Oregon State? Yes, we should, and I'm going to tell you why. No, we shouldn't. I got into an argument with another colleague recently who really thought about my model. And he was like, oh, I disagree with your model. I was like, I don't think I opened that door. We were having coffee and muffins at a conference, and I don't even know you that well, and now you've just attacked my model. And mind you, I don't have this published. It's not the Reff model on recovery, so it's not like I'm even out. Like, if you have a model published, you can take detractors, but it's not published, it's not out there. And I was like, well, tell me more. And he's like, well, you don't mandate your students to counseling. You don't make them go to counseling, and that's not what you should be doing. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, let's talk about that. Why is that important to you? Well, on my campus, our students said they wanted that. And I was like, on my campus, my students said they didn't want that. See what the difference is? Right? Is my program any less valid because I don't mandate counseling? I would argue no. My recovery program, if I mandated counseling and I had urine cups coming out, which I told my boss I will not have a recovery program if I have to deal with UAs. Urine is not part of my career. I've done many things in the name of science and prevention, but holding another man's urine is not ever going to happen. If I had UAs on our campus, we would have 0 students, and John and I, my colleague, would spend a lot of time sitting in an empty room talking about, wouldn't it be nice to have students here? Because that wouldn't work on our campus. Our philosophy on our campus is every student in recovery comes in as like any other student except they're in recovery until they tell us otherwise. If they tell us they're depressed, if they tell us they're suicidal, John and I don't go, oh crap, I have no idea how to deal with that. Right? We have resources for them. We link them to the counseling center. We get them the help they need. We customize the efforts for each student. Okay? That's what works for us. If it works for you to have your students go to mandatory counseling like Lisa does at Rutgers, every student goes to counseling when they come into her program. And that works for Lisa. And I would never tell Lisa that's a bad program. That's what works for Rutgers. That's what's kept her, she argues she's the oldest program, and I don't dispute that. I think she is. That's what keeps her program successful and has lasted the time that it's lasted. So the other thing that they got upset with me about is funders. I made a comment and said, if I started at Oregon State looking for funders, I would never open my door. And they said, well, you have to be, that has to be that's a core part of your mission is finding external funding. And I was like, well, it's part of my mission. It's not the core part of my mission. Our doors wouldn't be open if that's where I started. I started by finding the people that I thought could help me the most. And that was the director of our student union, who has no history of recovery that I know of. He's never disclosed. When I pitched the program to him, he said, my gosh, that's important. Why, do you want our Pepsi grant? I was like, well, yes, I have always wanted your Pepsi grant. What does one need to do for your Pepsi grant? And he said, well, I'm part of 3 people, athletics, student life, academic affairs, and one other, and we oversee the Pepsi grant. Would $25,000 a year for 3 years sound good to you? I mean, I could probably use it somehow. 1-page letter got me $75,000 in funding, and it was all because I went to a person that understands problems on our campus, who's our student union director. And I would argue if you don't know your student union director, you are missing a major opportunity, because student union directors have their fingers in every pot on campus. They solve problems, they know business contracts, they know recruiting, they hire amazing employees, and they pave the way. Every campus I've ever been on my St. Cloud State, Margaret Voss at St. Cloud State, oh my gosh, you didn't mess with her. Like, you got on board. She would say, that dog don't hunt. And I'd be like, I don't know what that means, but You just tell me what I got to do. I mean, she is a tough woman. She beat cancer, and she loves to talk that she beat cancer, and nothing can kill her. And that's Margaret Voss, and she gets stuff done. Our housing director on my campus, I was turned down. I'm going to say I'm good at groveling. They don't give you that in your Ph.D. program. I should have shin pads and knee pads on, because I grovel for things. I beg, plead. I don't steal, technically. You couldn't prove it if you wanted to. I asked about 20 people for space on campus, and everyone told me, there is no space. There is no space. I was like, can I buy an RV? I'll buy an RV. I'll park an RV. We call it the Recovery RV. We'll make burgers to pay for it on the side. As 20 people, I asked the person in housing. She said, absolutely not. We have no space. Finally, someone said, did you talk to Dan Larson? I was like, I don't know Dan Larson. He's the associate director of housing. He's in charge of facilities and maintenance. It's like, maintenance? Okay. Met with him on a bright, sunny afternoon in Oregon. We were walking across campus. I pitched him the program. He said, I got space. I might have hit my head. I didn't know what was going on. He said, we got space. I said, really? I can't afford much. He's like, well, it's a room probably about half this size, $1,200 a year. Would that work for you? I was reaching for my personal checkbook. I was like, what foundation account do you want that in? Like, I do not want to lose this. That is priceless on a college campus. And I said, Dan, after all this, I said, why would you do that? And he's like, why wouldn't I do that? I said, but the other person in housing, he said, you went to the wrong person in housing. You come to me. Now, Dan is the executive director of housing. Did it help having him on the ground floor? You bet. Is he a constant ally? You bet. Is he a superhero of mine? You bet. And you have those people, and if you haven't talked to a lot of different people, you're missing people like that on your campus. So I'm switching references a little bit. Those of you that know me, I got married at Disney World, and no, Mickey was not in my wedding, and no, it wasn't in Cinderella's castle, it was the Grand Floridian. But I love Disney World. And one of Walt Disney's famous quotes that I like is, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." And that's really when Lisa Laitman, when Kitty Harris, when Patrice, who I kind of think of as the matriarch of recovery, they probably don't like that, they set out to do the impossible some 30 years ago, probably 35 years ago, and they've succeeded. And now we are faced with some other impossibilities that we have to do. But every day, it's about engaging those impossibilities. I never thought the Higher Ed Center would be back. I was kind of a Higher Ed Center groupie. A little bit. I love those. That was the national meeting was what turned me on to my career. It's how I found a network of scholars, researchers, practitioners, people that I could go to. There is no academic program that I know to become what I am today. But it was from all of you, some of you in this room right now that were back at those meetings that said, Beth DeRico's here. Beth DeRico took me under her wing many, many years ago and said, I'll help you learn. We all do the impossible. We're fighting big alcohol, we're changing culture on recovery, and it's kind of fun to do it when it works, okay? So how many times have you been told you can't do that? How many times have you been told there will not be funding? Funding doesn't exist, okay? If Jen Mansky listened to that, she would have scholarships for her students. There is no space, I just told you that example. So I'm gonna give you two sort of feel-good moments, because there was the other thing, I went back and forth on this. I was like, should this be a data rich presentation? Do I wanna show how smart I am or how smart someone else is? And honestly, recovery to me is about the heart. I've cried more in front of my students in recovery than I probably have with anyone else, and I'm not a crier. They say, yes, you are. I say, no, I'm not. But you are working with people that have really let you into their life and been part of their journey, and it's quite remarkable. So I'm gonna give you two quick examples of things that are impossible. The first one, this is not showing my next slide, so I'm hoping I'm in the right order. My first one, let me peek ahead. My first one was, well, Oregon will never come together. Oregon can't work together on anything. We fight with everyone. We have the Civil War. Civil War, I mean, calling a football game, think about what people in Sri Lanka must think about our football game called Civil War. I mean, come on. Like, that's how much we hate each other. The things I've heard people say at Civil War time when we play the Ducks. Like, I had a friend who was pregnant that a Duck fan said they wanted to punch her in the belly. I'm like, what just happened? Like, I don't understand that. It's football, right? It's about putting a ball across a goal line, for God's sakes. What are we doing, people? So you will never get along with the other schools in recovery in Oregon. That will just not happen. We don't have the culture for it. So these are folks from U of O, and these are folks from my institution. They have gotten together. They have found community across the two campuses. We routinely go down to their campus. They routinely come up to our campus. They came up for Civil War when we were playing them. Of course, they crushed us. They came up. We were respectful. We welcomed them. The common bond was recovery. We are taking a retreat in about a month. We are renting a lake house in the middle of Oregon, and we're paying for it. And we invite all the other Oregon schools to come with us and join us. We are forging a path in Oregon for recovery unified as a state. It is possible. It is not impossible. When I see Ducks, I usually like, oh God, they're gonna make fun of me. I get it. Make fun of us. We lose football. I get it. You're cool. You have Nike. I get it. It's okay, right? When I go to these, I'm really excited to see those folks because they get it. My other one is my favorite story. It is my secret win that when I'm on my deathbed, someone will say, what was your biggest win? And it probably, in academics, professionally, right? It will probably be this next one, which you all seem as odd, but I was told I couldn't do something, and I don't do well when I'm told I can't do something. So we went to the UC Riverside conference. We took about 6 students, and UC Riverside is right near what theme park? Disneyland. And I said to myself, we're taking students to recovery this conference. I'm taking them to Disneyland. I'll pay my own way. I'll pay my other staff's ways, but I'm getting them a trip to Disneyland. We didn't go this far. We didn't go to this conference. We're taking a day, and we're going to celebrate in Disneyland these students and their recovery. Business centers said absolutely not, and they sent me all these forms that said this is a not use of state funds. I'm like, I'm not using state funds. I'm using foundation funds. You can't do that. It's impossible. It's impossible. It took me about 2 weeks, and I was going right. Remember red tape's my kryptonite? So I kept fighting, and then I forgot about my league of superheroes. And I started asking questions, and I found again the union director. I said, this is happening. He's like, well, did you leverage the foundation? I was like, what do you mean leverage the foundation? Oh, just tell the foundation that you have students in recovery, that you're not able to take on a trip, and this is a place where donors give. And in fact, Rob, you've given to the foundation in that name, and when you call and you tell them you're a donor. You don't call them you're a staff member. I called and I said, I'm a donor, I'm a President's Club, I've given money, and I gave money to this recovery community, and I'm being told that it can't be used to support students in recovery. And the woman said, oh, what was your name again? Oh, well, thank you for your donation, Mr. Reff. That's very nice. Who was it that sent you that email? It's like, and I told her. 1 hour later, I got an email saying not only did I not have to use foundation funds, I could use state funds because I had to use this language to get it approved, and within another hour we had Disney park passes for our students in recovery. I had a student at that conference, he's in the car, and he was in the middle of the park and he started getting really teary-eyed, and he's not a guy that cries. He had a really tough history. And I said, why are you tearing up? What's going on? He's like, I'm at Disneyland because I'm in recovery. That is F word up. And I was like, yes, that's part of why you're here, but you're also here because you're a student leader and you're transforming our campus. And you should be here. Spent the whole day in the park. Oh, I'm not crying up here, I swear. I spent the whole day in the park, and that is a moment they will look back at, and it'll be part of their experience. And why shouldn't they get to go to Disneyland? That shouldn't even be an issue. And that was a transformative piece for them. And I would argue educational as well. I certainly learned. So with that, I'm going to close a little early, if that's okay. So here's my challenge to all of you. So you have to decide now, as we embark on this quest together, are you ready? Do you take up the challenge to be part of the League of Recovery and Prevention Legends? It is not an easy challenge. It is besieged by things like big alcohol and ignorance and stigma, but we are surrounded by superheroes. The anonymous people, to me, is the single best antidote to stigma that we have available in our toolbox. You cannot watch that film and come out, if you watch that film and you come out still with stigma and still ignorant, nothing can help you. I can't help you. It is moving, it is touching, it explains in a way that is relatable to folks on what recovery looks like. It makes it accessible. Every time I've shown it to a group of students, they're like, who are not in recovery, they're like, I get it now. I get it now. And to me, there's a different kind of ignorance from a perspective of someone that's willing to learn versus someone that's not. And the students that are ignorant on our campus, I'm betting 99% of them want to learn. And I will argue the anonymous people is your best tool in the toolbox. Mr. Williams is a superhero of mine. You get to meet him later. So, are you ready to take on the challenge? I got one yes. I really failed if I got one yes, who already was, I think, rooting for me. So are you ready? Yes. All right, so go forth, become part of this legendary group of superheroes around you, whether it's for prevention, ending deaths, misuse, whether it's for supporting recovery. And students in recovery, go forth and do great things, and thank you so much for listening to me. Take care.